A retrospective look at the history of the Crimea in the light of today's events became the topic of the roundtable organized at the Press Center of the Institute for Reporters' Freedom and Safety on March 11th. The event discussed the refusal of former Yanukovych government from the Euro integration policy and its backwash for Ukraine, and the conflict of powerful interests in the region. The referendum intended for Crimea's accession to Russia and the fate of Crimean Tatars were also talked about. Historian Jamil Hasanli paid special attention to the situation of the Crimean Tatars, the native inhabitants of the Crimea. He said that in the late 19th century, 90% of the peninsula's population were the Tatars, and in 1944 they were deported by Stalin's regime and were never returned later. Hasanli related the status of autonomy given to Crimea after dissolution of the USSR to Crimean Tatars. This status envisaged protection of the rights of Crimean Tatars. Russia's attempts to annex Crimea, referring to the majority of Russians in the Crimea, were assessed as pressure, aggression, and violation of Crimean Tatars' human rights in the most severe way. By no means is separation of Crimea from Ukraine possible. It will only cause problems for Russians living in Crimea, said the historian. Director of Tehran Information Agency Mehman Aliyev spoke about political aspects, saying that Crimean Tatars are very concerned about the current socio-political situation. There are reports that Tatars will be exiled to Siberia in case of Crimea's annexation to Russia. Aliyev said that Crimean Tatars should not take part in this referendum, lured by Russia's promises of high positions, real estates, etc. Crimea conflict was assessed as Russia's attempt to gain financial resources from the West through extortion. Representative of the Crimean Tatars, Lord Kalilov, regarded the events as an elaborate campaign by Russian secret services. Deployment of troops in Ukraine under the pretext of protecting the rights of the Russian-speaking population is an unlawful action, Kalilov said. Not only the Tatars that currently live in Crimea, but those living in other places must also be allowed to take part in a referendum. Double citizenship of Tatars must be recognized. Descendants of those who were deported during Soviet times should also participate as well. Taking advantage of stated majority of some community is contradictory to the principles of democratic referendum, said Kalilov. Elvina Nurzayeva, activist of Azerbaijani Tatars community, said provocations by pro-Russian population against Crimean Tatars will lead to nothing. Dilara Bakirova, who was forced to come to Baku because of Crimea incidents, noted that Russians living in Crimea attacked Tatars and journalists. Her husband sent her to Baku in order to keep her safe from this violence. Bakirova stated that broadcast of Ukrainian channels was suspended in Crimea. Speakers Bakhtiar Tunjai and Delavar Assembly noted that Russia's policy will have negative implications for Russia itself.